Hi, I'm Case Lowe, co-host of the Open the Voice Gate podcast. The one question I'm constantly asked when it comes to Dragongate is how do I get into the promotion? Well, stop asking and start listening to the Open the Voice Gate podcast, released every Wednesday on the Voices of Wrestling podcasting network. For exclusive news and show reviews, look no further than the leader in Dragongate coverage, Open the Voice Gate.
Hello, Voices of Wrestling listener. Dave Ryan here. Have you ever wondered to yourself how many hidden gems are hidden away inside the last years of World Championship Wrestling? Have you ever asked yourself how many tenuous gags can be made about the name Mike Enos? And have you ever thought about what it sounds like for two Irishmen to interpret a very chaotic company through its B-show? The answers to all this and more are just a click away. Check out Days of Thunder every second Thursday on the Voices of Wrestling podcast network.
Did you know Microsoft has officially ended support for Windows 10? Upgrade to Windows 11 with an LG Gram laptop. Voted PC Mag's Reader's Choice Top Laptop Brand for 2025. Thin and ultra lightweight, the LG Gram keeps you productive anywhere. And Windows 11 gives you access to free security updates and ongoing feature upgrades. Visit lgusa.com/iHeart for great seasonal savings on LG Gram laptops with Windows 11. PC Mag Reader's Choice used with permission. All rights reserved.
This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling podcasting network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
To the highway in a brand new day. Gotta let it go. Fast to finger down. Dance tonight together. Hear everybody singing. 你看到我就怕，头皮发麻，我的手。
Welcome back to Open the Voice Gate for December 30th, 2025. We are members of the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network. You can find us on the Voices of Wrestling podcast feed or on our own dedicated Open the Voice Gate feed, wherever you get your podcasts. You can find us on social media at Open Voice Gate. And if you'd like to donate to the show, click the link in the show notes. It'll take you to our redcircle.com landing site. You click the button that says sponsor this podcast and you set up a one-time a recurring donation, no obligation whatsoever, but we would like to thank our previous donors. I'm one of your hosts. It's your old pal, Mike Spears, joined alongside your other host, Case Lowe. And Case, we somehow managed to have this be, I think that there's no other way we're going to have a episode being recorded on New Year's Eve ever in our history. This might be the latest a Voice Gate ever gets recorded in a calendar year.
I had not considered that, but you're right, because I mean, Mike, I love you, but something would have to go horribly wrong in my life to be recording a podcast with you on New Year's Eve. I don't... Buddy,
I'm not going to be in any position tomorrow night to be recording any show at 6:30 at night.
Yes, no, you have bigger fish to fry this year. I just, it's not exactly like the end of the calendar year is the time for me to live it up, but I don't want to live in the future where you and I are talking to each other through a Zencastr program on New Year's Eve. So this is going to be the latest we ever do it. It does not feel like December 30th. My time frames are all off. I keep on forgetting tomorrow is New Year's Eve, and I keep on forgetting. I almost forgot to submit an awards ballot this year. So I'm very glad that we landed the plane the way that we did, and I'm very glad to be here as always.
Yeah, it's fun time of year. I feel like with the it's like the part of the calendar year where I have to explain to my loved ones that I am spending time off basically just in my office watching shows from Japan all day. And we have like this nice like fun week of it. It feels like this year you could kick off like your New Year's weekend with Japanese pro wrestling with like these two Dragongate end of the year shows in Kobe, and pretty much there's a show every day. Today was Galate. I did not touch Galate yet, Case, but apparently everyone else did as soon as that paywall went down. But I think it's a fun time of year. I always kind of like getting out of the holidays and then immediately having, January 4th and everything right ahead of us.
I'm just at my house less than I used to be. So this is what was once a time to sit and vegetate on all of this stuff. It'll all be pushed to probably January 5th when I have to do a mad catch up on everything. So it's not fun from that perspective in the same way that it used to be, because I do try to leave and see society more than I used to. I don't love a lot of the lineups this year. I'm very excited to watch Lindemann versus TJP because for as much as I hate to admit it, and I do hate to admit it, TJP is such a brilliant wrestler, and I'm so happy that the reviews on that match so far have been good. I will parse my way through the Noah show, get annoyed at some stuff, enjoy other stuff. I'm excited for Ishin and Kato in All Japan, and we will see what happens at the Tokyo Dome. That is going to be a very interesting show this year. I do not necessarily have high hopes for it to be a good show, but I am always, always, always intrigued by it. So
it just feels like this is like the end of the era, like really more so than other retirements before. And I think like, at least for me, because we had like Muto 2 years ago, and that was like such a, at least natively, such a huge like passing of the guard, like the last star of the 90s, really kind of going away for that. But I guess as someone that like, even as a kid, like my exposure to Japanese wrestling was whatever came in magazines. So I knew of Muto. I had like no like real connection to him. So like Tanahashi's the first like major star I feel like in Japan that other than, some of the Dragon Gate guys, that is just like the entire career has kind of been aware and or followed the guy. So it's just like, I don't know where things are going to be on January 5th, but I'm like really fascinated about this week leading up to it.
I hadn't really thought about that, but yeah, I mean, I've been watching Tanahashi for 12 years. He's been in some of the greatest matches I've ever seen. I have not had a chance to sit down and read what Alan Forel wrote for Pro Wrestling Torch yet about Tanahashi, but knowing Alan and knowing the topic, I imagine that was fantastic, and I'm going to give that a look before watching that Dome show. It is crazy to think that he is going to be calling it quits, because my entire Japanese wrestling fandom has sort of been dominated by the idea of Tanahashi being a persistent figure and at times one of the best wrestlers in the world. I mean, really from 2013 when I would have started watching until 2018, 2019, if you're being really generous, you were guaranteed a match of the year, if not a few match of the year contenders from Tanahashi, and now we're pretty far removed from that. I would say since the Shingo stuff during the pandemic, I have not been super entertained by anything that I've seen from him. But man, I mean, it is as impressive of a catalog as there is. And having watched a lot of Okada in the C2 this year, and having Tanahashi on my mind, and then going back and looking at the end of the year, I always go back and look at my match of the year by year spreadsheet, and just seeing the repeated Okada, Tanahashi, Okada, Omega, Tanahashi, Ibushi, Okada, Tanahashi. I do sit back and laugh, and I realized in the moment that it was ridiculous, but I do sit back and laugh and think that so many people wasted so much energy trying to tell us in the moment that these guys weren't all-time greats and that we weren't witnessing the apex of pro wrestling, and that was silly then and it's silly now. And I'm glad that an overwhelming majority of people can now recognize Tanahashi as a top 10 guy, a top 15 guy, a top 25 guy, at worst a top 50 guy, because that is the correct opinion, and anything else, I would have a really hard time taking you seriously.
Yeah, I mean, we're at the point where you cannot tell the story of pro wrestling without, like the entire story of pro wrestling, without talking about the Tanahashi era in New Japan, and especially how we like to connect stuff to 2013 Ustream, and then all the stuff that we've kind of studied from that, and just as a factor, it is kind of like the feeling of seeing a guy kind of get the flowers. Like we had that with Yoshino at that time, and how in a lot of ways it's incredible emotional, but at the end of it you get to have that nice farewell on their terms. And I feel like that, especially for someone at like that station of the industry, Tanahashi getting an opportunity to go out like that is something still kind of to be celebrated. And I mean, not to go Doomer 7 minutes in case, like unless Saya Kamatani like just completely blows up even more. So this is like the last time that anyone that I think for like the ongoing future into perpetuity that wrestling's going to sell out the Tokyo Dome, and I feel like that's kind of one of those end of an era things as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I was listening to the Joe Gagney Christmas Draft episode, which I would highly recommend everybody do. It has become a Christmas tradition of mine. I enjoy that podcast. I look forward to it every year. And it was interesting listening to Alan and Joe talk about the differences in the way that they look at Japanese wrestling in 2025. And I think I'm a little bit more aligned with Alan in the sense that I don't think there's a ton of outright bad in Japan. I do think we are lacking all-time greats, and I think the person that I feel right now that's active in Japan that's closest to being an all-time great is Shun Skywalker. I know that's a conversation that, one, I'm not saying he is, but two, I know just the thought of that conversation will make so many people uncomfortable and clutch their fists until they turn, white. So I'm not going to do that. But Tanahashi retiring and Okada being in America, and despite my love of Zack Sabre Jr., me not apparently not thinking of as highly of him as many of my peers do, given the Hall of Fame voting this year, we're now entering a territory of no all-time greats. And I think that's what's missing from Japan. I still think, I was listening to that podcast going like, man, I go on my podcast every week and I complain about the state of Japanese wrestling, but I still like it way more than Joe does right now, because again, I don't think there's a ton of actively bad, or at least the bad is still outweighed by the good. Is that the good is not outweighed by the great, whereas it might have been that case 10 years ago.
Yeah, and I feel like that there's a level of self-selection in what we choose to consume too, and I feel like that might color things a little bit too. I really found like that all-time great discussion really kind of fascinating, because I was on my walk with Pudge and I immediately kind of stopped for a second and I go like, okay, who really is like a consensus all-time great that's still going and is like at like that level? And I found myself kind of in Alan's shoes going like, I like where things are going. I know I have certain kind of mindsets about things, and that I look towards the future a different way than a lot of others who kind of cover this side of wrestling. But man, it does, at least to me, I feel like that part of the negativity also comes from like just endless content,
Oh my
like,
God, yes. We're watching too much.
yeah, like self-select and as we like get to the point that I know that that just I kind of became aware of because Rich made that channel today in the Slack. I'm like, oh God, it's match of a year time, and like I'm at a point, at least like the way I watch and consume, that it's just like, am I going to be in a position where I'm like, okay, well, I think Kyle Fletcher is the best wrestler of the year, and I'm just going to like have to go through all my notes and go like, okay, yeah, no, it has to be this one or it has to be that one. And I don't feel like I've really had like those times before where like I feel like I'm going to be like seeking like to come up with a top 10 list this year a little bit.
Well, I made the comment last year when we did our award show, because we recorded it the first week of January. I think we did it the third last year. I think we were talking about the fact that the Dome was that night. And I made the comment to you, I go, we're recording our year-end award show on January 3rd, and I feel like we're too late. I feel like people have moved on. And that just wasn't the case 10 years ago. I think like 2015, 2016, I think about how big of a deal it was in a very small bubble, but how big of a deal it was to go back and rewatch your 20 best matches of the year, to whittle that down to 10 so that you could write long form about it for the Voices of Wrestling Match of the Year poll. And I love the way Rich does it. I'm glad that we haven't altered the timeline, but come end of January, when I submit that ballot, I'm not going to be watching stuff from 2025. There's too much happening. I was just telling you, the fact that I have New Year's Eve and New Year's Day plans is going to put me behind the 8 ball completely in terms of the footage that I have to catch up on by the time that I'm able to sit in my own home and be alone and consume the things that I need to consume. So I by that point won't have time to go back and go, well, let me dive back into the May 2025 Cork and Hall show and really evaluate what I liked on this compared to other things.
Yeah, no. I kind of already feel that looming feeling, and I do like that we're doing this year at the before the end of the calendar year.
I'm gonna cut you off here real quick because I want to
Yep.
make one more point. Is that
Mhm.
the all time great thing is now playing in my mind, and you know Okada is an active all time great, but his legacy is going to be at best weird because of this AEW thing, and it won't matter by the time that he retires. But right now, I understand why people aren't necessarily viewing Okada in the light that I feel they should. And then the other active all-time great that I feel very strongly about, and despite this being a Dragongate podcast, this will be a reoccurring topic in 2026, as I'm going to try to beat this idea into people's heads so that they vote for him in the Observer Hall of Fame next fall. But Kenta is an all-time great who should be looked at as an all-time great, who should be revered, who, quite honestly, and I know this is a bold proclamation because Tanahashi has all of these box office accomplishments that Kenta has never had and will never have. But Kenta should be looked at in a very, very similar light to Hiroshi Tanahashi. If I was taking their careers and stacking them against each other, at least from an in-ring perspective, I'm taking Kenta. And I think Tanahashi is one of the 15 best to ever do it. So imagine how I feel about Kenta. I'm watching 2007 Kenta on my TV right now. And it's like, yeah, this guy, when he retires, it should be the ultimate giving of flowers. And I think because some people are weird about Noah Juniors, or at least prime Noah Juniors, in the same way that they like Michinoku Pro but don't like Dragongate. You know, people that revere All Japan, 90s All Japan is the greatest wrestling ever, but then don't like Noah Juniors will never not bother me. And then Kenta's just had such a bizarre 2010s and beyond that he'll never get the credit that I think he fully deserves. But Kenta is an active all-time great, and when he does retire, he should be looked at as such.
Oh yeah, and I think that the smartest thing that he's done in recent years was go back to Noah and then immediately show like, hey, I was collecting a paycheck.
Kenta does
feel,
very, very well in my SFM 50 this year. I believe I finalized my list today, and Kenta does very well on it.
and just so the listener knows, Case has Kenta on. I have a pro wrestling Kageki show from 2002 that has Gentaro as a masked character in the opener, and it's awful.
I technically have a Nigel McGuinness comp on, and the match, which I think is a real unheralded gem, is the Morishima and Danielson versus Kenta and Nigel match from the first Ring of Honor TV pay-per-view. But
Yeah.
I'm enjoying Kenta so much in this match that I will be turning off the Nigel comp and finding random Kenta matches to watch as we record this episode.
Yeah, so that's what we have going on in the background this week. But we've got to close out Dragon Gate's 2025 looking at the two fan appreciation shows they did this last week on the 27th and 28th at the home base venue, Kobe Sambo Hall. And then for the rest of the show, we have our 2025 Ulty Awards. And I think, Case, I've been in the labs, I've been talking to Price, Waterhouse, and Cooper. I've been talking to all of them. This is one of the most hotly contested Ulti Awards in the history of podcasts making award shows for their promotions. It's real heated, so I'm gonna be real excited when we get into that. But Case, before we get into awards, closing out the year in Kobe Sambo Hall with the Triangle Gate tournament ending and new Triangle Gate champions and another Triangle Gate match coming out of this weekend, and already have things and full cards out for the first weekend in July or in January when the company will restart back in Kobe as well. What I thought that these were pretty okay shows, bolstered by the things that actually were of consequence on there. But what were your thoughts overall about the two nights in Kobe?
I really enjoyed the first show. There's a match on the first show that's going to come up later on in this episode, spoiler alert. And I thought the second show, which had a notable attendance of 815 fans, a great turnout for that one. I talked to somebody that was there who remarked about how long the line was to get into Kobe. And this is somebody who attends all the shows in this area, and they've never really seen a line quite like that to get into that show. So a big, big house to close out the year in Kobe. We talked about this a few weeks ago. You know, Tokyo remains pretty cold for them, but on the local level, which is where this promotion tends to thrive when they're really hot, there's a few things happening in the local markets, or at least in the non-Tokyo markets, I should say, that are notable and exciting. The UT show, the UT Homecoming show in January is already sold out. This number here in Kobe, there's been a few others that I've raised an eyebrow at, going like, oh, that's a few hundred more people than they had the last time. So good stuff there. And I thought good shows. One really great match on each show, and a pair of things that I thought, oh, that was really good. I'm glad I made the time for that. I'm glad I watched that. So they closed out their 2025, I think, in a very, very solid way.
Yeah, and I guess let's just get to the big headline stuff out of Kobe. The Triangle Gate League ended with a three-way Triangle Gate match between the top three teams out of the tournament, with the night one main event being Natural Vibes, UT, KZ, Strong Machine J, Gaja Dokoro, Kai with Jason Lee and Kota Minoura, and Love and Peace, Ben and Hyo along with Junior. And I really liked how they kind of set this thing up as like the traditional three-way tag match for it. And overall, I felt like on a show that they did some things in certain ways that I was like, all right, we are getting to this point here, that they saved all the crowd brawling for the main event. And I felt like that kind of added a little bit to the opening, or at least to the opening of that match. Running down the falls of this match real quick. First fall of the match was a cookie sheet low blow attack onto Jay to eliminate Natural Vibes at about the 17-minute mark, and then a closing stretch with just Love and Peace and Gaja Dokoro, finishing up with Hyo hitting the Samson driver for the win. Huge celebration for Love and Peace, as at least at this point they held everyone was a champion, but the rookies came out and decided that they wanted to get a title shot coming out, or the next title shot, and GM Ryo Saito booked it for the 28th, the next night. So we had two title matches across these shows, bolstered by the end of this Triangle Gate League.
I was fearing, as I turned this main event on and watched the opening minutes of it, I had really high expectations for this. I was talking to somebody earlier in the week about how these farewell to the year Kobe shows always go under the radar when there's really, really good matches on them. Again, because of the way the calendar turns over, and because of the way the first week of January looks in Japan, and because it's Dragongate non-cork and stuff, there's just a lot of factors that typically work against these shows in terms of generating any buzz for really great matches. But I always go back to the Masquerade Dragongate Generation match from 2020, which was phenomenal. I mean, it was one of the better matches in Dragongate in 2020, a year that you and I both really liked despite the, global pandemic at stake. So I had really high hopes for this match going in, and I thought it started a little slow. And I just worried that despite 9 guys being in the ring, all of whom I think the world of, and all of whom I think have had really strong years, it's like, oh man, they're not going to stick the landing on this in the way that I was hoping. The early part of the match, the only thing that I really, really liked was Hyo and KZ, and there's a lot of Hyo and KZ in the opening parts of this match, but they're standing on top of the heels, almost in that Crazy Max taunt position, and they do the KZ arm gimmick, the little, you know what I mean. It's like I'm doing the dance, but we're not on camera, so that doesn't matter. But I'm doing
the hand wave. The hand wave.
Yes.
Yeah.
He and Hyo do that on top of the heels, and I thought that was a really clever spot. I had never really seen that before. And then they go to get some offense. The heels on the floor, grab their ankles, heels take back over. But there's a definitive shift in energy in this match, and it's when Ben K hits his first double spear. From there, this match is on. And this match is on in a way that only a few Dragongate matches have hit this year. I think the May Cork and main event, the Hyo contra Hyo match, I think the August Kobe match that everybody loved, and rightfully so, I think that reached that ceiling. There's a few other matches that you could argue could be in this conversation, but the ceiling of this match, that again started with that Ben K double spear, and then was immediately followed up, by the way. There's a few spots I want to mention. One specifically is Ben gets Jason up in the torture rack and then walks towards the rope and just launches Jason over the top rope onto a pile of people, which I've never seen Ben do before. Everything from that point on was the highest level of Dragongate wrestling that I've seen this year, and I ended up being floored by how great this match was.
Yeah, I think that it had those moments where kind of like Natural Vibes was kind of there, and it was very clear that the Kobe crowd was partisan towards Love and Peace. And then but by the time that things really started kicking up and seeing how it felt like Junior, especially across these two nights, had a strong end of the year when he really needed to, because he had the sequence where it's usually like the UT uppercut into the KZ uppercut into UT starting a pen, and usually that's like the cutback for that. Him doing a counter out of it and having that was like a little thing that kind of raised my eyebrow, because during the tournament I would say that you would have Ben and Hyo mainly do the lion's share, and you would have like the certain moments of Junior, but like this one, and I think that would carry on through the next night, really was a lot of Junior kind of at the best that we've seen him of, at least this year. And
Oh my god! I
I
mean, Junior's the focal point of the second Triangle Gate match. He's in that match to almost an alarming degree.
and I feel like that's really needed. And not to like do a award preview thing, someone did pop up a lot in one of these categories in a way that I was like, you know what? I understand. I understand the feelings about Junior in this kind of position, but at least for him, kind of like ending the year in that kind of way, I felt like was a strong thing. And then I really, Ben and Hyo, we've seen how their chemistry has really exploded across 2025, and uh, the the period between the two falls where it was just Gaja Dokuro and Love and Peace, and what Hyo and Ben do and the way they kind of direct traffic is just some of like the best teamwork that I feel like I've seen in a long time. And that's at least going forward with Love and Peace as Triangle Gate champions, that's going to be a real highlight, I feel like, in all of their Triangle Gate matches, is that it does kind of feel like Hyo directs traffic and doing Ben spots and getting Ben in like and doing things in like the right position for Ben. And it's just kind of like a cool thing to see that level of teamwork kind of develop across a league and really across the last 8 months.
I'm trying to think, and I wish this is one of those things where the SFM 50 and the specific voting panel that we had, I wish we had more years in our archives with them, because I'm trying to think of another Dragon Gate unit that at one time would have had 5 of the 50 best wrestlers in the world, with Kame and Rita and Ben and Hyo and Junior, because I think Hyo finally reached that threshold this year. And you would have to look at the original World One, maybe World One International, because I'm really high on Swan in that era, and
I would say international over the original World One, because there's at no time would you have said that 2008 through that 2009 era KZ was a top 50 wrestler.
Okay, well, so World One, Doi, yes, Yoshino, yes, Pac, yes, Hulk, yes,
Hulk, yes.
absolutely, in that time period.
Tanizaki
in 2009, it would take me a lot of work that I'm not going to do to list out the guys. But at least on the surface, Tanizaki in 2009 seems plausible.
Yeah,
that's the year of the Kagatora Brave Gate match.
Mm-hmm.
he's in a few really high level matches that year. You could talk me into Tanizaki 45 to 50 just on the surface without doing the research.
Yeah, but like really, like you're going to have to, other than like that World One International unit, you're going to have to go to like All Out Warriors, where it's like, yeah, no, the roster was split in half, and Blood Warriors had Shima, Doi, Akira Tozawa, Hulk, and Ricochet in 2011. Yeah, that's like the only other scenario I feel like that
I'm trying
you would have that.
Berserk 2016, Shingo, Yamato, Doi, but I don't think you can get there. Monster Express at any time. Monster Express you would have, because you could talk me into
2014 Sachi. Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't say that, but okay. So 2014 Shingo, Tozawa, Yoshino, Ricochet.
I wouldn't say Uha.
That's the Uha's the hang up there.
Yeah.
But then if you go later, if you go 2016, Yoshino, Tozawa, Shimizu,
T-Hawk?
T-Hawk, I'm probably saying yes to in 2016, and then he's probably one of the 50 worst wrestlers in the world in 2017. But
I mean, he was a ghost in that unit, it felt like.
But that was also, I mean, it was
cycling him down.
Yes, he was, but also when you look at the spreadsheet from that year, you're going to go, wow, a lot of T-Hawk, a lot of really good T-Hawk matches. He's just it's the menorah effect. He's the least interesting guy in a 9-guy match.
Yeah, and you had that Dragongate run that lasted like forever, had 4 title matches, and you're like, oh yeah, no, he was in a bunch of great Dragongate matches in 2016, and then it's like, oh yeah, this is the run where the Dragongate kind of disappeared for a little bit, and they just never took the belts off of that Monster Express at that time.
What about, you see, Masquerade you couldn't do because of Estrella. Blood Generation,
to be honest.
Yeah. 2005 Blood Generation. You're talking Shima, Doi, Yoshino, Fuji on the cusp. I mean, Fuji's really, really good in some of that stuff. And then Shingo.
Yeah, main event Fuji at that time. Yeah. Yeah, no, I think you could do Blood Generation in 2005. I think you could, because Shingo in 2005 was there.
This is the danger of the hindsight exercise, because the wrestling world in 2005, it like that specific year compared to it's different if you're talking 04 or 06, but 2005 specifically, there's so much depth. And I worry that if I start looking at the US Indies and I start looking at just CMLL, I do think Fuji would get bumped. Fuji would be at risk of not being on that list. But I could see that version of Blood Generation I could entertain. That version of World 1 I could entertain. And the Love and Peace thing, maybe saying that out loud is a mark against the world of wrestling in 2025. But Ben had this, we'll talk about it when we get to the awards. Ben had this crazy under the radar great in-ring year, because there's no real definitive Ben K match, but I had more great Ben matches than just about anybody else on the roster. Kame and Rita, I think, are finally starting to get some of the credit they deserve. My thoughts on Junior are well known, and I thought Junior had a very strong 2025 when he was put in a position to do so. And then Hyo is the revelation this year, and it all goes back to us watching him in person in Vegas and seeing him connect with an American crowd in a quicker way than any of the other new school guys did. And I put a lot of stock into that. But then I also watched these 2 Dragongate matches, and I go, Hyo might have been the best guy in both of those matches, which is just something that wasn't plausible a year ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago. He's in an all-time work rate unit, and a lot of the time in these bigger matches, these multi-man matches, he's the straw that's stirring the drink. He's the guy getting the energy going. And I think that's really, really interesting. So while I understand for somebody that's maybe listening to this, they're not super locked in on Dragongate in 2025, they're trying to figure out what to watch, I could understand some sort of hesitation towards the idea of crowning Hyo as one of the 50 best wrestlers in the world. But I feel really strongly about that, even if he doesn't have the spreadsheet output that Shun has, that Ishin has, that Ben has. There's a level of skill with Hyo that I think is pretty hard to find right now.
Yeah, and not to jump to the match on the 28th, but it's just like seeing him work with like this variety of guys kind of underlines that, where he is the general in the match on the 28th. He kind of is the general in the match on the 27th. And I think it really, I mean, as much as Big Hug is just in the dumpster of history, I feel like the rise really started in 2024 for him. And what we're seeing is really the culmination of 18 months and really like post face turn and realizing what to do with that face turn, because he still is the most popular guy in the building. I felt like no one was getting calls like Hyo was getting across the 2 nights, at least to me. Like it's remarkable to see him like rewrite the ship in Love and Peace, and then come into the match on the 28th against 3 guys with a combined 5 years of ring history, and a lot of those combined years is Fuda's injury time, and just feel like that he is the calm hand, like in the way that you would. We mentioned him a little bit in the way that you knew that Yoshino was the calm hand.
I was hoping you were going to say Yoshino. I saw where you were going. Yeah. I absolutely agree.
In that he is, and you think about Hyo and Ben, I mean, 2016, along with Shun and Yoshioka, is their 10-year anniversary year. And isn't that really the fact that he was the straggler for so long in this class, and now it feels like that maybe Hyo is the person I want to sit down and talk about like wrestling, like psychology and crowd psychology the most out of anyone out of those four. He's really just like it's just a remarkable transition to seeing how he is in comparison to how just hoping for the guy to do well in 2017, 2018. It's wild.
The Yoshino comp is so good because I say this all the time with Yoshino, because right now Hyo really does remind me of 2007, 2008, 2009 Yoshino. And I always have to bring up the point that the Masato Yoshino we remember at the end of his career, this steady, ace-like, giant singles match star Yoshino, that didn't exist until one day it did. And that was in October of 2013 when he beat Yamato for the Dreamgate. But that was not the career that it seemed like Yoshino was destined to have for the longest time. I don't picture Hyo mirroring that. I don't think we're looking at a Kobe World main eventer with multiple Dreamgate reigns. I don't think that's in the cards for him. But the Yoshino thing, you have to shift your perspective on that and realize that he's Muscle Outlaws or World One Masato Yoshino right now. And I think if he had a deeper singles match catalog, that would be easier for people to see. But in the multi-man matches, I completely see it. I think that's a great comp. A few spots that I liked in this match that I just want to be sure to mention. UT does possibly the greatest Hikari no Wa I've ever seen on Hyo in this match. I have in my notes after KZ eats a spin kick from Junior and then comes back with an uppercut, I have, quote, "Oh, Kota Minoura's in this match. I forgot." Which is just insane. And then Minoura comes in, hits the Jumbo Tsuruta on KZ, but KZ pops up and hits the Destroyer, which I thought was fantastic. Later on in the match, Ben K hits a giant spear on Kota Minoura. Kai breaks up that pin, bridging German on Kai. Ben goes for another spear on Minoura, but this time he eats the knee. That leads to powder to Hyo. Jason and Hyo have a great closing stretch, and that leads to Hyo pinning Jason. 4.5 stars. Well worth your time.
Yeah, I was 4.25 on it, and it was just so fun to see. I did have a note that maybe this is me getting a little bit too in the weeds, and if so, okay, just pull me back from it. Do we think Ben does his knockout sell a little bit too much now?
No, because it pops me every time.
It was just something that, like, it was the Jumbo one that I was like, oh, I saw it. And maybe it is that we've now, I mean, between at least for me, seeing nearly all this guy's matches over that's made tape over the last 10 years and going like, oh yeah, I know if he hits the ropes twice, it's probably going to be a knockout, not the spear. And I had that note down, and maybe that's just me being in the weeds too much.
No, I mean, you got to remember, it's a 9-man Dragongate match, main eventing Kobe Samba Hall at the end of the year. This is the appropriate environment to do it in. If he starts doing it match 2 and across Fukuoka, we can have that conversation, but I don't feel like he's doing that. And also, I've yet to get sick of the spot. Every single time it makes me jump off my couch. So I am A-okay with him doing that.
Yeah, and to be honest, seeing it live and seeing how the crowd reacts to it live, I mean, if the crowd bites onto it, maybe just prepare to show off that you could act like you're knocked out nearly every match. It works. This is one thing that kind of poked out. Let's talk about the second night's Dragongate match.
Real quick on night one, just to hit some thoughts here. The Cielo and Shun versus Dragon Kid Naruki Doi match, I thought was a great Dragongate TV style match.
Mm-hmm. The Doible counter was really well done.
Yeah, I thought Cielo was fantastic on both of these shows. The Rita and Kame versus Kato and Kakuta match.
Yeah.
I will say this, and we don't have to make this a larger talking point now if you don't want to, but watching Kakuta wrestle Kame and Rita made me question why all of Kakuta's defenses so far have been against big guys. It's Ben and Susumu and Valletta coming off of a Shun match, and I think Kakuta would greatly benefit. And now they're setting up Cielo, it seems like, who's another big guy. They need to get Kakuta in with a mid-sized wrestler immediately, because that's where he does his best work. That jumped out to me there. I really like that match. And then Ishin versus Kukui, I thought was fun for what it was. I thought Ishin showed so much personality in that match and made that, I'll use the term spectacle. I thought Ishin turned that into a really fun spectacle. So 4 matches on that show that I think you should spend some time with.
Yeah, just quick notes on those. I want a full Cielo and Doi program. Like the sequence that they had in before that closing stretch was just one of like something where like, okay, you could tell when Naruki Doi has someone in the ring that he's like, okay, I could do something a little different with this person, and I feel like that's that for it. I do think like given the scheduling and given how everything's set up this year, why not have a Kakuta Corkin 2026 title defense against you can't get Jackie and Rita up there. I'm just trying to think of I kind of, and I know that this will get some of his fans kind of mad. I kind of want to see Kakuta run through KZ in a title match.
Oh, fuck, I was just about to say the same thing. We're on the same page tonight. I was just feed
7
KZ
minutes.
to him. Oh my God, yes. But even Dragon Kid in his state, I would throw Dragon Kid his way. I would, when Hamara gets healthy, I think that'd be a really interesting match. I'm begging for a Flamita. A Flamita Dreamgate match in 2026, and I think he and Kakuta would have great chemistry. But it jumped out to me that, I obviously want to see Kakuta and Kame have a Dreamgate match, those guys being classmates, which feels like we always forget that just because they've gone in such different directions in their careers and the way they've been presented, and it doesn't really seem like they spend a ton of time in the ring together. But watching Kakuta against 2 small guys, it was like, that more of that, I think, would do everybody a lot of favors.
Yeah, and it just seems like that it did not denigrate the Twin Gate champions to get run through in that kind of manner. So why not trust your fans like level of acceptance for like Kakuta being a monster and feed KZ to him? Just do it. Kukui and Ishin, I thought that for like what it was, and as soon as Ishin came out and was pulling out chairs, you were like, oh, he's telling us this is going to be a shenanigan tour de force, and they did the comeback really well. Kukui's moonsault press hitting, and then I think Jay said like that was like the first time in Dragongate that he's actually hit the moonsault, and it did definitely feel like okay, game over. Kukui just squishes you, you're done here, bye. But a fun first night, and I thought that with the ending angle with the rookies coming out and Fuda getting right into Junior's face and Junior going like, stop following my dad, guys. I'll start taking you seriously when you stop following my dad. And using that to set up the match the next night was a real fun way. And I think that the fact they had that across the 2 shows, case you had even that first night was like 450 or so in Kobe, and then that jump across it, you're talking about 1,300 tickets across 2 nights, ending the year. And I thought that was a good bit of show to show things. On the second night, I felt like that the Triangle Gate match, Ben Hyo and Junior versus Ryofuda, Daiki Yanagiuchi, and Akihiro Sahara. Junior gets the fall on Daiki. I was ready for like these kinds of matches from the rookies as soon as they broke off from Mochizuki Dojo, but seeing especially Fuda with Junior and the way that they really kind of work their sequences, like the way that especially like towards the closing stretch, getting the big near fall off of the Hiryu and the way that they worked their way into it through transitions was just really fun to see. And it felt like that it was time for these guys to kind of have this match away from Mochizuki. It was something that, like, in a way, this was a match that I was expecting out of these 3 guys like 2 months ago when they first broke off from Mochi.
This was awesome. This was a fun little program that I certainly wasn't expecting this to be a title match when these cards were announced. I like what they did here. This is probably, let me go to his match guide real quick. I mean, this has to be the best match of Fuda's career, right? This has to be his best individual performance.
Individual performance, I would say, from him, yes. Matters how you feel about the Mochizuki Dojo versus Z-Brats Captain's Fall match. But that was more of a Daiki match.
Was that Bayside last year?
That was Bayside this year. Yeah.
Oh, I did really like that. I was looking at that Bayside card today, and I was like, I really like that show. I think this was better. I had that at 3 3/4. I had this at 4 1/4, and that was right when Daiki was really fascinating me on every show. So I would have this as the best Fuda performance. I would have this as one of the best Daiki performances. And
Yeah.
I think Sahara did the single greatest apron shoulder tackle I've ever seen in this match. Sahara hits the apron shoulder tackle on Ben, knocks Ben to the floor, and then Daiki throws out two wicked tope suicidas immediately following on Ben. And that, much like the Ben double spear and the Dragongate match the night prior, that's when the momentum shifted in this match.
Yeah, and then just the way that I think Sahara had probably his best spine buster of his career against Ben
Yes.
too. Like all three of the rookies really showed it, and just like in it going back to Junior and Fuda throughout the match, and just like the two of them just lighting each other up. I watched the Stardom Dream Queendom show from yesterday, and one of my takeaways, and I know I need to be better about watching Star more consistently, is like, oh, everyone, even the rookies are lighting each other up in this promotion now. And it was nice to see Junior and Fuda being willing just to haul off and kick the crap out of each other. Like even the pissing match seated kicks felt like they had a little bit more umph in it. And if anything, this makes me want to see more of Junior and Fuda in a program together, because it's not a Ryu Fuda beating the allegations of needing a Mochizuki around, but it did really it shows the parts of Ryu Fuda that make you think like, okay, this is why I keep the stock in this guy. This is why, even though he's had such a up and down first stint of his career, that you can't give up hope for him. And I can't believe that I'm saying this again about Ryu Fuda as we enter 2026.
I mean, my take with Fuda is the same as it always is. And this was a great match. Do not get me wrong. And he's had great matches outside of Mochizuki Senior and Mochizuki Junior this year. I still want to see him be great without a Mochizuki in the ring more often. I'm waiting for that in 2026. I think I've seen it more than I ever have this year. What he and Junior did in this match, I thought was wrestling at a super, super high level. I really enjoyed what they did. But with Fuda specifically, do it against Ben, do it against KZ, do it against Kakuta, do it against somebody not in the Mochizuki family lineage, and then I will really start to pay more attention to you.
And to throw some more flowers on Daiki, I thought the closing stretch with him and Hyo, like his tequila shot near fall, like I bet on that more than I expected to, and the crowd did. And I thought the sequence built around Daiki trying to do a dive and Hyo just doing like his hunting thing and knocking him out of the way was just like a really kind of smart thing, where it's like, yeah, no, Hyo's at a point where like if he's dealing with someone at Daiki's rank, like he should be able to use his offense in that kind of manner. And I thought that was a really smart twist in the closing stretches of this match.
I agree with that. I think the world of Daiki. I hope he lands on his feet more in 2026. I really like watching him wrestle.
That wasn't the main event though, because of the last show for Dragongate in 2025. We had Shun and Cielo versus Kato and Ishin. A lot of Kato and Cielo, this all dating back between them and King of Gate with the tainted win that Kato got here. Kato gets the win clean on Cielo with the Caldera Luna here, and they do a singles challenge, and that will be happening on those double header in January, kicking off the year before the Cielo title match. I guess it's still going on the 16th in Corkin.
Yeah, so what we have set up for the new year is Rita versus Tanaka for the Bravegate belt, Cielo versus Kato in a singles, and then we're assuming Cielo versus Kakuta at the January Corkin, correct?
Yeah, it's just they just have not announced that far down the line with those shows. I'm actually kind of surprised that we have full shows from the 8th and the 9th already, to be honest.
Yeah, that's true. I thought this was the best Cielo performance yet. I think you'll understand it when you watch the match. He was locked in. If he has that performance against Kato and against Kikuta, he'll be fine. I'm far less worried about him in a big position now after watching his 2 performances, but especially this one. Yoshiki Kato is getting really good.
My last thing before the finish in my notes, Kato looks great, double underlined.
Yes.
I love his rebound collapsing lariat.
His new thing, for those that haven't seen it, is he's throwing like a JBL style lariat multiple times in the match, and it rocks.
And it's so distinctly different from like the other clotheslines and lariats in the company. So it doesn't do anything to Kakuta's rolling lariat. It doesn't do anything for if Shingo comes back, or like the pineapple bomber. It's so different in that it feels like he just puts the entire force of his body behind it. And Cielo really was took a beating, and at least from like what we've seen of Cielo since October, now it felt like for a while that they were really easing Cielo in, but between the match that they had with Not Hug and the match that they had in the main event here, it does seem that the confidence in the guy is growing as we move into January. And I have to say, like, doing a kind of masked tweener versus young heel main event to close out one of your first shows in 2026 it's pretty inspired, and I'm really looking forward to it just because of the way that Kato has just been looking like a monster to close out this year.
I'm with you. I think that's well said. I'm a little bit more bullish on some things I think they're going to try in 2026 after these shows, because I we'll talk about it in the awards. The second half of this year has not connected with me the same way that Dragongate normally does, but I liked a lot of what I saw in these shows, and I'm fired up for the first few shows of 2026. Even if we won't get into it now, I don't love those Kobe shows on paper. I think they're a little thin, quite honestly, but the stuff that matters, I think, will be good.
Yeah, and I mean, you're going to get Tanaka versus Rita. So Rita gets a pin on Tanaka in the on the second night pre-intermission match, and straight up challenge here. And I'm ready to see Tanaka take on the other half of Jackie Rita. Like, this is it. Tanaka's at 6. He wants 12. So we got to pick up the pace again for the Brave Gate.
I have an off-topic note before we get into the Ulty Awards, and it circles back to what we were talking about at the beginning of the episode. Kenta versus Nigel McGuinness from the Ring of Honor 7th anniversary show, 2009. It's on Ring of Honor's YouTube channel. Holy shit. I don't feel as good about wrestling in 2025 after watching that. Everybody pause this podcast, take a half hour, go watch Nigel versus Kenta from 2009, come back here, we'll do the Dragongate Awards. Oh my God, Mike, we were in
just
trouble.
Go watch more Nigel from 2009.
Go watch
Nigel
more.
2000.
I'm telling you, I make this point whenever Greatest Wrestler comes up, and I start looking at the last 20 spots on my list. Nigel's always there, and I always go back to the fact that nobody works like peak Nigel does. Nobody works on their back. Though, like, Nigel works a lot on his back, which I think is also representative maybe of the MMA influence at the time. But
yeah,
he just has an approach to wrestling that is so it's so flawed in 2004, 2005, 2006 with a lot of notable high points. 07, 08, 09 Nigel is so fucking good. And I just saw the clips of the Aries match that I don't think has the legacy it deserves. But
are you talking about the Aries and Orlando match? I was there in person.
No, this is the Aries concussion match where he does he hits Nigel with the heat-seeking missile, and Nigel goes face first into the barricade, which I'm sorry, William Regal, that is just look, Nigel has lived a hard life, but I adore that spot. I think it's one of the coolest things any human's ever done. And then they have the Orlando match, which is great.
Yeah, are we in a safe place between us right now?
Do you want to talk shit about William Regal?
Oh yeah, I loved how much like everyone was like William Regal, like him, like all the things, like he wrestled on a broken neck. William Regal, like just like the amount of tweets I saw about Regal's concern trolling really made my day.
Look, I don't remember if I said this on air or off air when Alan and I think this is like my 5th Alan reference. I apologize, but we did the Eddie Guerrero podcast a month and a half ago, or almost 2 months ago now. And Regal came up, and I don't remember if I said on or off air that this is a podcast in which we are likely going to praise literal murderers, and there's plenty of audio of me praising murderers and sexual assaulters, all of these awful people. The person that I have the hardest time separating the art from the artist on in pro wrestling right now is William Regal. Every single part of him bothers me to no end. I can't look at Regal objectively in the same way, and this is going to sound awful.
Oh, I lump his
terrible.
I lump his dumpy son in with him, sadly, because he's
right
painted
now,
it so much.
Yes, like I would have an easier time watching a Benoit match than a Regal match, and I know that's insane and stupid, and I shouldn't say that, but there is something about Regal that gets so under my skin that I can't handle him right now. I think he is the biggest fucking phony, and it drives me insane.
It's just like, my God.
By the way, his genius scouting in the 2010s, just so everybody is clear, was that he showed up to Ebola, and not Ebola, but Ebola, a Battle of Los Angeles. It was like, oh, these guys are good. What if I just signed them? And that was, Regal, the eye for talent. And it's like, all right, well, I could have told you ACH was good.
And allegedly saying a very uncool thing about secretly the most talented person there. About the way that he wrestles.
That's my favorite. My two favorite Rovert things are any reference to the fact that Eddie Guerrero, if he were alive now, would be a full-blown...
Would be MAGA. Yeah,
he would be a full-blown right-wing grifter. Rovert has been right about a million things. He's never been more right about something, and it's purely hypothetical. And also any reference to the awful things that William Regal said about Zack Sabre Jr., those make me laugh 100% of the time. Any reference to either of those, and I am kicking my feet at Rovert's Twitter feed.
Yeah, it just has us rolling in our seats whenever we see that, and then Sarah Del Rey gets brought up. Like, it's just like
that's another really good one.
Top three right there.
All right, I've got a movie to go to at 9:30. Let's break down these awards.
All right, so welcome to the 2025 Ulty Awards, where we celebrate the greatest in Dragongate throughout our year. This year, thanks to all of our listeners that voted, we're going to be doing the same kind of format that we've done before with listener votes, where Case and I each basically get one vote, and then the listeners get a third vote. And that's the way that if it's unanimous, it's unanimous. If it's not, it's not. We do have some case that we're going to have to do some tie breaks tonight, just as a heads up. There is some three-way ties between the three pots of voters, if that makes sense.
Yes, gotcha.
And starting off, we should start off with the biggest singles wrestler award of the year. We will talk about all the awards, and we'll finish up with our own personal Dragongate top 10 matches of the year list. But MVP for the year, this is all around MVP. Think about it like your Flair, Thez, and the Observer. And I'm going to read off 3, 2, and 1 for me, Case. And then if you want to list yours, and then I'll tell what the listeners did, and we can discuss who we think is the MVP of 2025. Are you ready?
Please.
All right. My third place vote for MVP was Shun Skywalker. My second place vote was for Ryoya Tanaka, and my 2025 Dragongate MVP is Yamato.
Oh, that's so interesting. Okay. My third place vote was Jackie Kame. My second place vote was Yamato. My first place vote was Shun Skywalker. I want to talk about Yamato with you before we go to the listeners, if that's okay, because I think I felt like me having Yamato at 2 was a really bold proclamation, but you one-upped me. So give me your spiel on Yamato as MVP this year.
I just think that when you're looking up and down the card and the people night in and night out in the promotion, who is the person that is the most important to the promotion? It's been Yamato in 2025. He has had what I think will go down as one of the best Dreamgate runs in history, and he had maybe towards the end, and maybe his last few months of the year were a bit more quiet, but that's to be expected after a run like that. So I'm not really dinging him for everything after Kobe World, but I think leading up to it and the way that he weaved in the Bravegate stuff with Daiki and that happening, and then I mean, he's just like, I think he is at the top of his career right now. And my only real regret in thing that we would sit down to you shoot with GM Ryo Saito about 2025 is, do you think the belt should have come off Yamato? Because at year end, I don't know if that was the right move. It kind of feels like in some ways with like the Shun belt pillow to Kakuta that I think Yamato still could have been in a better position as Dreamgate champion going the full calendar year. And the more I thought about it, Tanaka finishing in second, I think that he has really made the Bravegate a 1B after years of it kind of falling past that with SBK, and really before SBK not being in a great place to begin with. The Bravegate's in a great position from Tanaka basically just plucking it out of essentially being frozen during the Yamato run. And Shun, I think that there's just enough things that he has to be on a top 3, and I don't ding that belt pillow run for him really when it seems like that there's a longer chase there. But the more I thought about it, the more convinced I was that Yamato was the MVP.
So I'm really intrigued by that because I thought I might be on an island there. Shun is still my number one. The company still revolves around Shun. He's still the single most interesting thing on the roster. When we get to most outstanding, I'll break down some numbers and just in terms of how much better I thought Shun was than everybody else on the roster. But I was looking at my match of the year tracking spreadsheet, everything 4 stars and above, and I do not have a Yamato match above 4 stars after Kobe World. The best thing that he did was the Kimura Trios match with the All Japan crew at Dangerous Gate. And I went 3 3/4 on that. I love that match. It's one that still resonates in my mind. I've got Ryu Inoue from All Japan on the fence right now in my SFM50. He might end up being my single last cut to get somebody else on. I'm sort of weighing him and Yutani from CMLL in my head right now, but Inoue impressed me so much of that match, I would go out of my way to watch him for the rest of the year. But the work that Yamato did from January to July, Strong Machine J, KZ, Jason Lee, Mochizuki, Shun, I mean, he was the best champion in wrestling for that 7-month period. And I'm with, it was something that was hotly contested at the time. You and I spent a ton of time talking about it as to who should win at World, either Shun or Yamato. I wanted Yamato to win. I still think Yamato should have won. I still think Yamato should be Dreamgate champion. And I think the company has suffered as a result. That's something, especially when we get into Unit of the Year, that I want to talk about. But I don't think Dragongate has been the same since Yamato lost that title. And while I can't put him above Shun because Shun did it for 12 months, Yamato realistically did it for 7 or 8. I really do think that he had such an incredible year, and he's worth finishing top 3 MVP voting.
Yeah, and then you add in like the Swan match in Vegas.
That's right.
And it really puts it together. Like I did for folks put together like my watch list essentially of the year, which for me, it's not just 4. I do basically, if it's a good enough 3.5-star match, you can make time for a 3.5-star match in my mind. Yamato does drop off a lot. I only have 3 entries of him after August. I just think that the first 7 months were just that strong enough to make that work. So our listeners' case, that this is going to be kind of a little bit controversial too, because it was almost a split tie between Yamato and Shun, but Shun appeared on 1 less first place vote. So the listeners chose Yamato.
I'm fascinated by that. That makes me happy. I thought I might be on an island rewarding Yamato for, the half year that he had, but man, that is interesting. Give me that top 3 one more time.
So our so third ended up actually being Rita and MVP with it, but the listeners, I kept the 1 unless it was a tie or there was something with it. The listeners was Yamato and Shun, but Yamato had 1 more first place vote, and I feel like that in that case it goes tiebreak goes to Yamato, and that makes Yamato our 2025 Ulti winner for MVP.
I think that's a good vote. I'm very happy with the listeners. They're well done.
Most outstanding, this is a purely in-ring, so no business, no promos. We're just talking about your actual wrestling work. Going back from 3 to 1 for me, my number 3 was Ishin, my number 2 was Shun, and my most outstanding wrestler for 2025 was Jackie Kamei.
So, Mike, I'm going to ask you to do some math on the fly here because
Okay.
I have to change one of my answers. My third place vote that I submitted was Rita.
Yes,
I would like to bump him out for Ishin.
that's fair.
I forgot about Ishin during this voting process. He and Ishin have the same number of 4-star matches in Dragongate for me, but I did not flip over to my North America tab where Ishin was phenomenal for Prestige Wrestling in Vegas this year, which would bump him ahead of Rita. And I also think just having watched Ishin in person and falling in love with his character performance in Las Vegas, I think Ishin deserves that nod. So I'm going to go Ishin, who finished third for me with 14 matches at 4 stars or higher. Jackie Kame second with 16 matches at 4 stars or higher. And your first place winner this year with a grand total of 22 matches at 4 stars or higher, Shun Skywalker.
So we will need a tie to be broken by the listeners, and the listeners have chosen for their most outstanding wrestler almost by acclamation, to be honest. It was Jackie Kamei. So the tiebreak goes to Jackie Kamei being our most outstanding wrestler for the Ulty Awards.
So give me that top 3 again.
So the top 3 for the most outstanding for our listeners, it was Kamei, then Rita, then Skywalker.
Wow, Rita, what a year for him.
Rita
Good for
did
him.
Really well with the listeners this year.
As he
Rita
showed
did
off. My top 5, or I guess I'm gonna give you my top 6 because it was Shun at 22 matches at 4 stars or higher, Kame at 16, Rita at 13, Ishin at 14. So Shun, Kame, Ishin, Rita, and then Homare and Ben both with 12. Now Homare is aided by the fact that almost all of those matches were with Shun Skywalker, but Ben, what a sneaky great year from Ben K.
He's been a lot of fun. Even though he acted as a belt pillow for last year, I feel like ever since he touched the Dreamgate again, things have been looking up and up for Ben K. We moved to Rookie of the Year case, where this is actually a year where sometimes there's just like, well, congratulations, Kota Minoura, you are the Rookie of the Year by being the Rookie of the Year. There's a lot of candidates this year, and working my way backwards, 3, 2, 1. My number 3 is Kazuma Kimura. My number 2 is Jiro Shinbashi. And my number 1, of course, is Homare.
I will not fall for this Jiro propaganda. My number 3 was Akihiro Sahara. My number 2 was Kazuma Kimura. And my number 1, and what I think might be the greatest rookie year I've ever seen, was Homare.
And our listeners agreed with us pretty much by acclamation. Was Homare was the winner of the category. Number 2 from the listeners, Akihiro Sahara, and then number 3 was Jiro Shinbashi. That makes the Ulty Award winner for Rookie of the Year by acclamation, Homare.
To summarize for anybody maybe trying to catch up on Dragongate this year that hasn't followed the promotion super closely, and I put this in the awards channel in the Voices of Wrestling Discord, and I was met with partial apathy, which I understand, but also some pushback, which I was disappointed by. In 1 year, Homare has become a 2-time Dragongate champion. He won Dragon Gate's Tag League, which, Mike, I think you and I both put that tournament, those winners have a lot of prestige. I think that's a tournament that really matters in the context of this promotion. And Homare, Homare did it by wrestling 3 times in one night. Star ratings for those 3 matches, 3.5, 4.5, and 4. He was the standout performer in the Open the Bravegate tournament. He was put in a, quote, featured or drawing match on every big Dragon Gate show this year. That would mean Bayside, Dead or Alive, World, Dangerous Gate, and then the 2-night Gate of Destiny. That would also mean almost every single Cork and Hall show. And he was positioned post-intermission, meaning one of the final 2 matches, on 7 Dragon Gate shows this year. And then, like I said, 12 matches at 4 stars or higher. From an accolade standpoint, I struggle to think of a rookie who ever accomplished more in a little over 12 months. If you want to go back to September through November, 15 months, I struggle to think of any rookie that's accomplished more than that. From an in-ring standpoint, I've said this since about November of last year. He assimilated to the roster so quickly that it's so easy to forget that he was a rookie. That's the single greatest compliment I could give him, is that he was somebody who very quickly transitioned to good for a rookie to great at what he does. He won't finish well in the Observer Awards. He won't get the respect that he deserves. I don't understand it. I think it is so obvious and transparent that he had one of the greatest rookie years in the history of pro wrestling, and it just bums me out that he won't get that widespread acclaim.
Did you know Microsoft has officially ended support for Windows 10? Upgrade to Windows 11 with an LG Gram laptop. Voted PC Mag's Reader's Choice Top Laptop brand for 2025. Thin and ultra lightweight, the LG Gram keeps you productive anywhere. And Windows 11 gives you access to free security updates and ongoing feature upgrades. Visit lgusa.com/iHeart for great seasonal savings on LG Gram laptops with Windows 11. PC Mag Reader's Choice used with permission. All rights reserved.
Yeah, like the Tokyo Sports thing, that was one of the... Well, we don't expect that anymore, but just like the amount of silence about this guy when he's been... And really, like, in this calendar year is when they've taken the training wheels off the guy. The ignorance of it is just kind of astounding to me in a lot of ways. But it's nice to see that at least the people who know that Hamare is the rookie of the year. We move to breakout wrestler / the person who has the most stock up on the year. Going backwards, my number 3 was Ryoya Tanaka. My number 2 was Ishin, and my breakout wrestler for 2025 was Yoshiki Kato.
So this is for stock up, and my number 3 was Yoshiki Kato. My number 2 was Hyo, and my number 1 was Ryoya Tanaka.
So I feel like Hyo had that stock up in 2024. I know that Big Hug is the thing that we want to forget that happened, but that I thought that it was more like that this year was kind of the culmination after reaching that level last year.
So I look at this award in terms of a lot of stature, in terms of how we think about these guys.
Okay.
And last year, you and I weren't comparing Hyo to Masato Yoshino.
That is true. That is true. No, you are right about that. So looking at our listeners, their number 1 choice was Ryoya Tanaka. Number 2 was Ishin. And then number 3 was Rita.
Interesting. Okay.
Rita, folks love Rita. So Ryoya Tanaka is our breakout wrestler of 2025.
And that's deserved. You know, he really did take a level up. And I think your point about him finishing where he did for MVP for you is a totally valid one, because I always wanted him to be this Dragongate champion that he is. I wasn't sure that he would be able to pull it off, and sure enough, he has. So a credit to him for doing what he's done for that title, doing what he's done for himself, a number of high-level matches for him, and I'm very much in line with that. I like that.
This Kageki show is semi-main evented by Kuga versus Diablo, and Diablo, I don't think Diablo's ever been good, Case. No. I know he's appeared on some stuff, and he shows up some Dragongate stuff. He is awful. He is just absolute dirt.
I will not be watching that.
Well, these people aren't awful, but we do have to say that in the Dragongate Stock Exchange case, we're moving these shares here. We're getting out of these positions. These are stock down wrestlers of the year. My number 3, Luis Monte, and it's just really he's the person that feels like hangs Big Hug a little bit more so than it really should. And in 2025, they had him pretty isolated, doing Team Mexico stuff throughout the year. Number 2 is Junior. I really feel like that what Junior ended on a very good note, but Junior this year, outside of like the Bravegate match against UT, not progressing where I'd want him to progress. And then my number 1 stock down, because it's very clear to me what KZ is to this promotion, and it's not necessarily what people watch the promotion want. I wouldn't hold KZ stock if I were people going into 2026. He is my stock down of the year.
Man, I thought I'd be on an island on a few of these awards, but it turns out not the case. My number 3 was Junior. My number 2 was Monte. And that one was really tough for me because I loved the Team Mexico versus Team Japan stuff. And I thought Monte was outstanding in a lot of those matches. But again, in terms of stature, this is a guy who was a Dreamgate champion last year. And the thought of him even being a challenger at this point feels a little far-fetched. He's taken a massive step down. I hope that he and Flamita and, quite honestly, Bendito or the Panther brothers, I hope they're all teaming in Dragongate until the end of the time. I loved the in-ring year that Monte had, but it's clear that he is not in the position that he once was. And my number one would be KZ, despite the Yamato match in March. That was absolutely fantastic. One of the better Dragongate matches of the year. At no point in 2025 did it feel like it was KZ time. This was as down of a year as he's had, just simply from an opportunity standpoint. I compare him a lot to TJP in that when KZ is really on and he gets to perform at a high level, I struggle to list many wrestlers that I enjoy more. And I think from a technical standpoint, there's very few wrestlers that are better than KZ. But I didn't see a lot of it this year. Vibes was a screwed up unit who would be focused on either UT or Flamito or even at times Strong Machine J more than KZ. And while I don't think he's any less talented than he was at this time last year, I do think he lacked the opportunity to remind us how great he is.
No, I am with you on that. And that even is the case as I'm looking at my top 10 list and I'm like, yeah, no, I am stocked out on KZ, but he sure shows up on my top 10 list of the year. But the listeners, they went a different route, Case. The most frequently mentioned person in first place votes, and though their candidate was Kota Minoura.
Oh, that's last year thinking. I will say this. I really struggle with stock down because nobody in Dragongate I thought really took a beating this year. And the way that Minoura has at times, and the way Daya has at times, and the way that Yoshioka was pretty controversial at one point. There's no one on the roster where I looked at and went like, ugh, remember when I believed in that guy? That just wasn't the case this year. The Minoura thing, I mean, I don't know. I've processed my emotions on him previously.
I'm actually kind of surprised that Yoshioka did not appear once as a listener stock down.
Yeah.
I kind of thought that Yoshioka, given how divergent opinions are on him, I thought that he would appear. Did not appear once. Other vote getters, number 2 was Takashi, and number 3 was Madoka Kakuta, which was
I could see
kind
that.
of interesting.
I could see that. We'll fold that into the unit of the year discussion.
Yep, and that makes our sorry listeners, that makes our stock down of the year KZ 2-1 on that. Unit of the year case, we're gonna have to have a discussion about this one because we have a 3-way tie between the voting pools for this. My number 3 unit was Paradox. Number 2 was Love and Peace. And my number 1 unit is Gaja Dokuro.
Okay, so you went Paradox, Love and Peace, Gaja Dokuro.
Correct.
Okay. This is where we really differ. My number 3 was D-Courage. My number 2 was Love and Peace. My unit of the year in 2025 was Z-Brats.
We both picked the heel units, just what side of it?
I have just determined this is going to be a larger point. I'll try to get through it quickly, not to bore people, but I messaged, I was having a really hard time filling these out. And I think over the last 2 or 3 months on this show, I've had as hard of a time analyzing Dragongate as I've ever had. And I've come away from a lot of these episodes frustrated with my own self because I don't feel like I'm articulating some thoughts the way that I want to. And I put a lot of that on the fact that I don't think Gacha Dokuro right now is a good heel unit. And it took me until today to come to that realization. I think they have good individual parts. I really like what Kato's doing. Ishin, I think that speaks for itself. Kakuta as a champion, I'm running hot and cold on, but I'm unfortunately running a little bit more cold than hot right now. I don't think Gaja Dokuro has done enough to differentiate themselves from Z-Brats. It feels just like a lesser version of a unit that by the time Z-Brats was done, I think they were one of the all-time great heel units. And Gaja Dokuro is Z-Brats without Shun Skywalker, and that just inherently makes that unit less interesting to me.
And I think that's entirely valid. I think that really, like, if you're thinking about the image of Gaja Dokuro and what really has changed other than Shun Mare being exited out of it, it really is, okay, Kakuta in the main event is beating everyone clean. that does not go out throughout the entire unit, though. And so there is a lack of coherency with this. I think that the reason why I went Gaja Dokuro above Zebrats is that there's a certain like different kind of energy that I get watching a Gaja Dokuro 8-man, 10-man tag than I do a Zebrats one. In a lot of ways, I think Zebrats, but by the way that it became so popular towards its end, became a massive detriment in that it just, you had to get your popular members of that unit out and on their own thing and let the heels be heels. And maybe for me, I'm glad that this is just a heel unit, and we're not having like, we're not squaring the circle of Shun being this popular, but also supposed to be the big bad heel. And and maybe because it's a little bit cleaner, I'm a little bit more drawn to that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense, but I disagree with that. I thought by the
That's
end
fair.
of Zebrats, I thought by the end of Zebrats, they had really accomplished something absolutely remarkable in that you could do the Vegas combination. You could do Shun Minoru Ishin, you could do Shun Jason Ishin, you could do Shun Ishin Kai, you could do Shun Hamare Kai, you could do towards the very very end, you could do Shun Kakuta Hamare. You could plug in any three members of that unit, and they were guaranteed to have a baseline great level trios match. You also factor in they're being led by Shun, who, for as much as I like Kakuta, I think Shun leading Z-Brats was roughly 100 times more interesting than anything Kakuta's done since he took over Gaja Dokuro. You had this Hamare piece for all of this year that was super interesting. You had Minora and Lee being used, I'll say this, being used heavily in the early part of the year. Two matches with Rita and Kame, the Shun Hamare stuff and Rey de Parejas, some really notable things in the first half of the year. Whereas in the second half of the year, they were really good when they teamed up, but I don't think they got as many opportunities. Z-Brats at times, I'll always go back to the summer of 2022 when that unit was either overseas or beat up, and there was just a string of Shun Kai Hyo house show matches that were dry as a bone. But if you take those away, it's one of the best units in company history. It's one of the best heel units in company history. And the 7 months of Z-Brats coincides with the 7 months of Yamato as Dreamgate champion. And I don't think they've been able to find that gear since Z-Brats went away and since Yamato stopped being Dreamgate champion.
Oh, I think that's kind of the big existential question after this kind of reign that Yamato had, is that everything's kind of still like there's not solid footing with anything really in the promotion other than maybe Love and Peace at this point.
Yes. And by the way, I guess I buried the lead there because I complain about Love and Peace not winning all the time. Removing any fandom I have from it, I genuinely think it's fantastic for the promotion to belt those guys up in the way that they did. If, Kame and Rita lose their titles at Uno Dos Tres in February, I'm going to be absolutely devastated. I think that should be the longest of long-term Twin Gate reigns. I think they should go through everybody on the roster once. I think they should have rematches. I think it is good for business for those guys to be Twin Gate champions for a long time. The Triangle Gate belts, I'm a little less focused on from a box office standpoint, but I think those guys should be Triangle Gate champions. We go back to the point I made. I think a unit made of 5 people, I think all 5 guys are 5 of the 50 best wrestlers in the world right now. Use Love and Peace as much as you possibly can, and I think it's really good for business. And I worry this promotion is going to have Gaja Dokuro beat them into a pulp come January, February, March, and we're going to shift back in a direction that I don't like.
Well, Case, I'll let you know that our listeners would be really devastated if that was the case, because by an overwhelming margin, Love and Peace was the listeners' unit of the year. Next after Love and Peace was, I had it up a second ago. I apologize for that. After Love and Peace, right after that one would have been Gaja Dokuro and Sai Patra as number 3.
Interesting. Yeah, I am just not. It took me a long time to come to that realization today that I am just not into Gaja Dokuro right now, and it's really hurting my enjoyment of the promotion. Saipatra, I love. I love their trio stuff. I'm super bummed out by the Hamare injury, but I don't feel like we got enough time with them this year, and I'll take the 7 months of Zebrats or the 12 months of Decourage over what they did.
Yeah. It's Saipatra. I was bummed from the Hamare injury that we did not get more of their 8-man tags, because I really enjoyed that one tape 8-man tag. So, Case, we have a 3-way split vote here, but I have something I want to propose.
Okay.
Both of us have Love and Peace as our second place unit. Our listeners overwhelmingly, by a margin of 10-2, picked Love and Peace. I think Love and Peace is the Dragongate unit of the year, according to the Ulties, if you're all right with that.
I'm confused on what the controversy is.
Oh, I picked Gaja Dokuro. The listeners picked Love and Peace. You picked Zebrats.
Oh, no. The consensus is Love and Peace. I'm totally fine with that.
All right. I'm glad that we came to a good consensus here. Most improved. My most improved, going backwards, 3, 2, 1. Number 3 is Hamare, if only because this year we got to see him without the training wheels that we had to see for like the first 3 months of his career, which in retrospect, great idea. Get him in the mix, basically have him bump around, do his corner cutter and super kick, and then let him build up from there. But I think there's a notable difference from the Hamare that we last saw in November and the Hamare we saw in January. Number 2, Rhea Fuda, if only for the fact that now he actually does wrestling moves. The Hear You is one of my favorite individual moves in the promotion, and he's showing that he can be more than just a kick boy, which I think is something that was always holding him back. And my most improved wrestler is Yoshiki Kato. I had major Yoshiki Kato questions at times in this year, but the way that he closed out the year and the way that, like, as soon as he got a full calendar year as a wrestler, we've seen how much he's grown, makes him my most improved wrestler in Dragongate for 2025.
My number 3 was your number 1, Yoshiki Kato, my third place vote. Bendito gets my second place vote. I think the improvement from the start of his time in Japan to the end of his time in Japan is worth rewarding. And
Good pull there.
Thank you. And my number 1 will draw your ire, but it goes back to the stock up conversation we had. My most improved wrestler is Hyo. I thought, look, you and I, for a long time, were the only 2 Hyo fans on earth. And then more people got on board, and then Hyo got better, and then Hyo got better. He's almost become the Miz of most improved. But I think this year he took such a substantial leap, and I wanted to document that in these 2025 awards.
No, I am with you on that. So it was a complete tie with the listeners for first place. Number 3 was Hamare, but number 2, joint first place vote getters were Rhea Fuda and Yoshiki Kato. So I think that makes Kato the Ulty Award winner.
Yeah, I think Kato had a higher ceiling. Fuda really killed it at the end of the year, but I'm much more intrigued by the way that Kato's improving the way that Fuda's improving.
No, I'm totally with you on that. Show of the year, and this is the overall bucket. This includes everything. My number 3 show of the year was the October 8th Corkin.
And do you have that pulled up? What were the key matches on that?
Let me get that spreadsheet.
Grab that real
up.
quick, because I'm curious.
Yep, I got it right now. Hyo Kamei Rita versus Team Mexico, Monte and the Panther Brothers. Triangle match, Kai, Ishin, and Kato versus Shomare and Kimura, and Kakuta and Ben.
Okay.
So that's my number 3 right there. Number 2 was January 15th, Corkin Special 1-on-1. And my show of the year was Kobe Pro Wrestling Festival from July 13th.
Okay. My number 3 was Rainbow Gate Night 2 in Corkin Hall. This was UT versus Mochizuki Jr. for the Brave Gate belt, Hamari, Ishin, and Kato versus Flamita, Casey, and Strong Machine J for the Triangle Gate belt, Jason Lee and Coach Minoura versus Dragongate and Naruki Doi for the Twin Gate belt, and Yamato versus Masaki Mochizuki for the Dream Gate belt. My number 2 show, same as Mike's, but I'm going to give it the correct name. It was Open the New Year Gate New Year Premium 1-on-1 from January 15th. I had 4 matches at 4 stars or higher on this show. This was Mochizuki versus Mochizuki, Hyo versus Minoura, KZ versus Monte, Ishin versus Kakuta, Jason versus Jackie, Bin versus Kondo, Strong Machine J versus Susumu Yokosuka, Dragon Dia versus Naruki Doi, and Shun Skywalker versus Yamato. And my show of the year, much like my Kobe World Pro Wrestling Festival.
So the listeners differed with us. They had a show that did not rate on our top 3 as their show of the year.
Okay.
First off. So their number 3 was that Rainbow Gate Korakuen. Number 2 was Kobe Pro Wrestling Festival. Number 1, Dead or Alive, May 5th, 2025.
Oh, I don't agree with that. That's really interesting. So Dead or Alive, as I scramble to find this card,
I have the Brave, UT versus Hamare, and Steel Cage Warfare, Mascara contra Caballero, Shun Kakuta, Minoura, Dia Kakuta, and Yoshioka. Those were my 2 matches from that show that made my watch list.
And then also, there's a Triangle Gate match, Flamita KZ, Strong Machine J versus Hokage and Susumu. And then a Tanaka versus Hyo singles match that started the show. Oh, but Kobe World's so much better than this show.
Yeah.
Because I didn't even love the cage match. The Kakuta turn was not executed super well.
Yeah, I do get the nostalgia, and you do get UT finishing a story in his home arena, and like that definitely deserves to be remembered. Like that's when we think about the last Dead or Alive, we're going to think about UT winning the title in his home arena. But I think that Steel Cage Warfare match, like I think we need a year off from them, and then we can figure out where they go from here. But the turn wasn't as executed as the way that I would have wanted for that, at least. So our Ulty Award goes to, since both of us picked this, Kobe World 2025. It's a summer spectacular like none other case.
Yes, take that, listeners. Your opinion was wrong, and we are crowning Kobe World as the show of the year.
Small show of the year. This is usually the one that it requires the most clarification. This basically means it's a show without full production. So no Jay on commentary, and it used to be single hard cam. The idea about this category is you think about your Kobes, you think about your Kyotos, you even can think about some of your Ideon number 2s, but it's not like Kobe World. So it's that's the parameter of it. My show number 3 was the Kobe King of Gate show from November 8th. My show number 2 was 8/24. I think that was Kobe Summer Festival. I don't have the show title name on it, just the date. But I do know what my number 1 was. That was the Ray Day Parade House Finals from Kobe Sambo Hall from March 30th.
What was your second place one? What was the date on that?
8/24.
That was a doubleheader in Fukuoka.
Yeah, that was a real... Okay. But that had Hamare versus Kamei versus Flamita versus Ishin.
Yes.
SMJ and KZ versus Ben and Hyo, and D Courage versus Kakuta and Minoli.
Okay,
all 3 of those matches. I had 3 4-star matches on a Hakata, across Hakata showcase. I have to put that on my list for the year if that happens.
No, I think rightfully so. My list is going to be also in Fukuoka, the afternoon show from June 15th. This had Ben Hyo and Junior versus KZ, Strong Machine J and UT. This had Hamare and Shun versus Dai and Yoshioka. Kame, Rita, and Tanaka versus Bendito, Flamita, and Monte. In an 8-man main event, Ishin, Kai, Minoura, Kakuta versus Hulk, Dragon Kid, Susumu Yokosuka, and Yamato. My number 2 was the King of Gate show in Kobe on November 8th, and my number 1 was the Ray Day Parade House Finals in Kobe on 3/30.
Well, we disagree with our listeners on big shows. We're all on alignment on Ray Day Parade House being the small show of the year. They also mentioned the Buiden Zero Volume 7 show. There was a mention for... There was a mention for the Osaka that had Fuji versus Gianni Valletta. I think you might guess who had that one. And in a particular one was mentioned was the Shun Skywalker and Mondai Ryu homecoming match from Tajimi was one of the ones mentioned. But it was clearly the Ray Day Parade House Finals.
I've determined that is my favorite moment of the year, is just that entire show. I think the Hamare stuff on that night is going to stick with me for forever.
That's fair. That's fair. And case we need to have
go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No, I was going to transition out. Go ahead.
No, I was just, I think when I think about core memories from 2025, and we always talk about how stuff blends together, and it goes back to this footage thing we've talked about this entire episode. I will remember the Vegas stuff super clearly. I remember Shun versus Yamato super clearly. Mochizuki versus Valletta is probably the most fun I've had watching a wrestling match this year. But the Homare stuff in Kobe, I think, is my favorite. Just, I can normally tell these year-end shows are a little bit different, but like, I'll get messages throughout the day if a Kobe show is particularly special. And that was a day where I was very busy on my phone reading about what was happening in Kobe before I could actually watch the show. And then to sit down and have it deliver the way that it did, I'll remember that show for a very, very long time.
Yeah, no. And just, I'm looking right now my match of the year list case. I have several combinations of Hamare and Kamei in that building showing up on my top 10 list for the year. It just, that 30th show, like that's a show that when we talk about like going back and rewatching, that will be one. And I do need to have a discussion with you on what qualifies as for Dragongate match of the year, because if a certain weekend in Vegas does not count,
no,
then
it does. Okay. Those are Dragongate matches.
All right, that was my mindset with that. Okay, we prepared our top 10 lists for matches of the year, but we will talk about which ones we voted for and the listener ones before we kind of decide the Dragongate match of the list. In case we usually do this by just going backwards between the two of us. So the floor is yours. What's your number 10?
Number 10. Ben-K, Hyo, and Mochizuki Jr. versus Jason Lee, Kai, and Yoshiki Kato versus KZ, Strong Machine J, and UT from December 27th, 2025, 4.5 stars.
I love it. Right at the bell. You got it's like one of the last matches of the year, and they made the list.
It edged out Doi versus Skywalker from November. I thought that three-way Dragongate match was just slightly better.
So my number 10 match is not a match that I rated because of what the match was, but this is the match that is going to stick with me when we talk about the year and the moments. And it's from the first Korakuen of the year, Shun Skywalker versus Yamato. That's a match that I still think vividly about the way that Shun just ran through Yamato and just beat what felt like the eternal champ just dead in the ring. And for me, that's something that, like, it's a vanity pick a little bit, but that's something that I'm not going to leave behind in 2025.
I do not have that match listed, but I like your reasoning behind that. That is one that sticks out in my mind pretty heavily.
So what's your number 9?
Number 9, Arrow Panther, Fight Panther Jr. versus Archangel Divino and Ultimo Madito from April 18th in Las Vegas, the Pro Wrestling Revolution Dragongate joint show.
I have that match further up on my list.
And then what is your number 9?
My number 9 is from January 25th. Gate of Bayside is for the Open the Twin Gate belts. Kota Minoura and Jason Lee versus Jackie Kamei and Rita. Just the start of a run for a tag team that will appear 3 times on this and appears in different combinations another time on my best of Dragongate top 10 matches of the year. Kamei and Rita. We did not do tag team of the year, but I feel like we could just say by acclamation it was Jackie Rita. Like,
no, I actually had a note on that because I had 6 Kamei Rita tags at 4 stars or higher, and then they had the 2 matches in Kobe that I really liked. They had the match against Yamato and Gurrican Mask from Ryukyu Dragon that was 3 3/4. I thought that was really, really good. They had the Panthers match in October in Kobe that was really special. They had the Gate of Destiny 4-way tag on the 11-2 show that was really special. And they had the Monte and UT match in Hokkaido that was also pretty good. So that's 11, that's a comp DVD of 2025 Kamei Rita.
Yeah, just one of the best tag team years in company history.
Yes.
Just easily. And it started in Gate and Bayside when it was just, wow, this thrown together team that only existed case by that time for 40 days is really good. We should see what happens with them.
Worked out nice. That was one of 2 Kamei Rita Jason Lee Kota Minoura tags that I had at 4 stars or higher this year because they had a rematch in Rey de Parejas that was also great.
God, Kamei and Rita. What guys?
I know.
What's your number 8?
My number 8, speaking of, Jackie Kame and Rita versus Dragon Dia and Yuki Yoshioka from November 3rd at 4.5 stars.
I have that higher up for me.
I assumed you would. You're number 8.
My number 8, speaking of Jackie Kame, it is during the Open the Bravegate tournament from April 19th. Jackie Kame versus Hamare from Kobe Sambo Hall at 4.5 stars. I
do not have this one.
I felt like for Hamare, this, like we talk about Ray Day Parejas and what that was for that night. This was him kind of accomplishing that without Shun and him by himself. And we saw him to then later on have other strong matches against like UT. Like that's not a match that would have made my Dragongate top 25 list. A lot of 4.5 star matches for me this year. But I just thought that this was really like just such a strong performance. And against the guy that before Hamare, Kame was kind of like Mr. Kobe Sambo Hall dating back to the SB Kento feud. So having that in that building just made it kind of special. So yeah, that was my number 8. What's your number 7?
Speaking of, Jackie Kame and Rita versus Hamare and Shun Skywalker, March 30th, 2025, 4.5 stars.
Oh, that's my number 7 too. So let's talk about it.
I have vivid memories of Hamare's offense in this match. It was worked with such precision. It was worked so quickly and with such high intensity. It's a little like the Eddie Guerrero thing of, you look at some modern wrestling and go, where's the snap? Where's the intensity? Where's the fight? And you wouldn't necessarily expect it from two of the smallest guys on a roster full of small guys, a rookie and Shun Skywalker, but you got everything good out of pro wrestling in this match.
Just it at that moment, it was like, oh my God, Hamare really is that wrestler.
Yeah.
And this was like a little bit after his training wheels were taken off, but it was during Ray Day Parejas that you really got to see it. It was really, really incredible stuff. And I always felt like that Rita and him worked pretty well together too. Like that's something I want to see further down the line. Rita, it was
4 guys with sublime chemistry.
Yeah, but I want to see Rita versus Hamare at Buyuden 9 in a scrap or die match. That's all I'm saying.
I can't wait for the eventual Shun Kame tag team. That's coming at some point. I'm gonna have to move to Kobe.
Yeah, no. At that point, that will probably be when I'm at my most obnoxious.
Yeah,
like I'm not gonna be able to contain myself.
Oh my God, that's gonna be so good. I can't wait.
Yeah. Your number 6.
My number 6, Korakuen Hall, June 4th, 2025, also at 4.5 stars. Masaki Mochizuki versus Yamato.
This was the match that would have been at 10 if it wasn't for Shun versus Yamato for me.
One last heroic Mochizuki performance, one last heroic Yamato defense. They've had matches that have been slightly better, which is hard to believe, but these guys really gave it their all, and I was just sort of blown away by how physical and dramatic all of this was. If it's the last great Masaki Mochizuki Dreamgate match, he went out with a bang. I really, really loved this match.
Yeah, gosh. Yeah, it was tough for me to make that number 11. And that if you weren't going to allow Vegas things, it was just going to slide right in there with that. My number 6 is Hyo contra Hyo from May 9th, Gold Class versus Natural Vibes. Just like at that moment, you really knew that like you could not break up Gold Class in that iteration. Like in that match, and especially Junior in that match just was at another level. One of his strongest performances of the year. And one of those matches that for the Joe Lanzas of the world, and I don't say that derogatorily whatsoever, this is like, hey, I know that you have certain touchstones in what you like in Dragongate. This match, we'll throw this on the comp tape with Mochizuki and Yamato, and you will be kind of comfort food. This is like a comfort food Dragon System match of the highest quality in that level to me.
I have it later on my list.
All right, number 5.
Yamato versus KZ 3-1-25. I have this at 4 3/4 stars.
I also have that in 4 3/4 stars, but we haven't gotten to my 4 3/4 stars matches yet.
Give me your number 5.
My number 5 was a match that you had a little bit earlier. This is from April 18th, the Lucha Solos versus Panther Brothers. I was at 4.5 stars, and this was a match that that maybe it is the live bump a little bit, but sometimes like when you see wrestling in like a certain environment and see certain kinds of performances, and you will just like know that like that performance was incredibly special on that night. And I think you could really, even though they were over there before and were solidifying the relationship, this was probably like the last ace card for the Panther Brothers to get that full Dragongate run that they would have in the fall based off of this match. And
yes, absolutely.
It's phenomenal. Yeah.
I was a big fan of the Panthers going in. I knew they were going to be great. I did not expect the chaos that unfolded in front of us to unfold the way that it did. It is a highlight of the wrestling year to be in the room for this one, and I'm glad that it's represented in both of our top 10s.
Yeah, no, just really, really cool. You're number 4.
From Las Vegas, Ben K, Hyo, and KZ versus Ishin, Coach Minoru, and Shun Skywalker. This was the main event of the Dragongate Pro Wrestling Revolution show at 4.75 stars.
I had that one up higher.
We'll get to it then. You're number 4.
My number 4 was Yamato versus Shun from Kobe World.
I have that one higher.
All right. What is your number 3 match of the year for 2025 in Dragongate?
My number 3, and this is what we voted on in the Ulty Awards, Ben-K, Jackie Kame, and Rita versus Dragon Dia, Madoka Kakuta, and Ryoya Tanaka versus Bendito, Flamita, and Luis Monte from August 11th in Kobe. This I had at 4.75 stars.
I did not have this one.
Really?
Yeah. Look, I went off of my list and I did not have 8.5. What did I have?
8.11.
This match 8.11. Okay, I had this at 4, and I did not have. I had it by team name, so I had it at there. This was 4.5 stars for me. So this was just like matter of taste for all my 4.5 star matches of the year.
This is one of those where you could really sit back and enjoy the greatness of Flamita. You could sit back and enjoy the greatness of Monte. I thought Dia really brought it. I thought Kame and Rita obviously really brought it. I love Ben in matches like this. 4.75 stars. It happened in it's so far and away the best match to ever happen in Kobe Art Center, and it's one of, I think, the better non-Kobe world but Kobe-based Dragongate matches in history.
Yeah, this might be the best match ever in Art Center. I really do.
I mean, best match in Art Center is not even close.
Yeah, gosh.
There was. Oh, I'm gonna have to find it now, and I know we're running short on time, but it's gonna drive me nuts. I think it's a Kame match that went to it. They went to a time limit draw. Do you remember this? This is like right when they started running Art Center. So this would have been. This
has been 2 years ago.
I know what it was. Kame in Takuma Fujiwara, February 27th, 2022. That match was great. That was when we believed in Fujiwara. Main event: Big Boss Shimizu, Dragon Dia, and Yuki Yoshioka versus Hyokai and SB Kento. Semi-main event. Oh my God, semi-main event on this show, Mike. Ben K, Dragon Kid, Kaisuke Ikuda, and Yamato defeat Eita, Problem Dragon, Punch Tamanaga, and Yosuke Santa Maria.
Do you know where Kaisuke Ikuda is popping up now, which just blew my mind that he would show up there?
No, I have a McAfee security system that blocks that sort of stuff. Where is he popping up now?
JTO.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, like he had a match against Taka a few weeks ago.
Michinoku?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Shit. I take back what I said. I'm going to have to watch that. That sucks. I wish you would have told me that.
Yeah, no. It's you know, like I have like a weird fixation on tracking this guy's what has happened to this guy ever since then. And yeah, I have to go through Taka's because Taka is faster for me to type with this.
Don't link me. I don't need that I'll find it on my own. I don't
find
need
this
that
on
in my
your
life.
own time.
Yeah, I don't need
time.
that. Okay, I appreciate it. You're trying to be a good friend. I don't need that. I'll find it later.
Christ, Taka wrestles a lot more than I realized he did.
He wrestles a lot. He's got nothing else going on. No wife at home, so you know.
Yeah. And he has to go do matches and they ran like 5 shows at that one venue that they did the semifinals of King Gate at.
Mm.
What was that? Okay, so yeah, this I'm not going to tell you what show it is. I'm just going to read you the names on the match. Arata, Jewel Bird, and Keisuke Okuda defeat Ryuma Tsukamoto, Taka Michinoku, and Yukubi Kagatobi. Don't go searching for it. It's only an 8-minute match.
Okay, well that sounds awful. So good. All right, what's your number 3 match?
My number 3 match of the year from Gate of Destiny weekend is Twin Gate D-Courage versus Kamei and Rita, and it's the crowning achievement of our boys.
I agree.
The 1 year perfect tag team run ends with them as Twin Gate champions, beating the standard bearers of the Twin Gate division. The best night, what I feel like was like one of the best tag team matches in Dragon Gate in a while, and I just think like the Daya in that match was so giving to those two, and I felt like really elevated the match and elevated the tag team.
I feel like anything that needs to be said about that match has been said, so I will yield my time. I think a fine number 3 pick.
All right, your number 2?
Benkei, Jackie Kame, Mochizuki Jr., Rita versus Fumita KZ, Strong Machine J, UT, 5'9", Cork and Hall, 4 3/4. You talked about this already. I echo all of your thoughts. Everything that makes Dragon Gate great, despite every company trying to be Dragon Gate, they still can't do this. A near perfect match. I was just completely blown away by it.
Absolutely. My number 2 was Yamato versus KZ from the Cork or the Osaka date from March 1st. This was my first 4 3/4 stars match of the year, and if on the 2025 mixtape, I feel like the Yamato versus KZ title match was like exactly as it was promised and just was exceptional. And if that's like being honest, if that ends up being like one of the last times KZ gets a challenge, I don't know if that's necessarily the case. I think he had maybe his best Dreamgate challenge this year against Yamato.
There's certainly an argument for it. I had that at my number 5. So great stuff there. 4 3/4 from both of us.
All right, your match of the year.
Shun Skywalker versus Yamato, Kobe World Pro Wrestling Festival, 7/13/25, 4 3/4. It capped off perhaps the last great run of Yamato's career. It was just an incredible Shun thing. You know, the sort of match that I think he needed for his legacy. It was the match that I wanted them to have. It was the match that fit that stage. Absolutely phenomenal stuff from two of the best wrestlers in the world.
And I feel like for like Shun's legacy, like you hit on it for a second, you think about like his Kobe World legacy here, and I think that you look at people who have had consecutive like singles matches at Kobe World, and not even like per year. Like you have Yoshino and T-Hawk, you have you have just other like those kinds of pairings, and this is like the headline of Dragon Gate for this generation, and these two guys have perhaps the best big stage chemistry out of anyone on the roster, maybe throughout its history, if you really want to drill down.
The point I've made previously is one, Shun needed a this level of singles match in a non-pandemic stage. I would argue the Kakuta match from Dead or Alive 2023 is on this level, but Dead or Alive and Kobe World are different shows, and Dead or Alive singles matches and not cage matches mean different things to different people. But I've said before, the worst thing to happen to Shun's legacy is in 2021, he had a 4 3/4 star match with KZ, and then the next night a 4 3/4 star match with Yamato. And those matches cannibalize each other. I feel like 50% of people, like myself, prefer the KZ match. I think you're on the side that prefers the Yamato match. And it was just a weird thing that just sort of muddied what the definitive Shun Skywalker match is, at least in terms of a singles match. And I think we now have this, and I can point to 2025, and I can point to Yamato and everything that led to this match, that built to this match, the drama around a genuine, we don't know who's going to win this match, and out came my match of the year.
No, yeah, it was my number 4, and everything that you said. My number 1 match of the year is from April 18th, 2025. It is the main event of Dragon Gate and Pro Wrestling Revolution, Gate of Revolution show. And I watched this both in the building with UKs, but I went back and watched it like the next day, and I watched it a few months later. And this is a 5-star match for me. Shun Skywalker, Kota Minoru, and Ishin versus KZ, Hyo, and Ben K. We talked about it at the time. It's one of the best Dragongate WrestleMania weekend 6-man tags, and all that that means. It was just like real phenomenal stuff at that point, where like you have to keep Hyo and Ben on the same team, because this was during the whole 4 possession of Hyo storyline going on there. Just getting opportunity to see Shun work that much in person, and also see him in a building that was just ready to go along for the ride wherever they take us. It was the kind of wrestling match and wrestling experience that there's very few other matches that I feel like have like impacted me at that way. So yeah, my match of the year was the Dragongate 6-man at WrestleMania weekend, like it's been so many times throughout my Dragongate fandom, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, I'll close with this. I've been in the room for a lot of really special Ring of Honor matches. I've been in the room for a lot of really special AEW matches. I've never had more fun watching wrestling than I did that night with you watching that match, and I don't think that will ever be topped. I don't need it to be. That was a peak viewing experience. That was some of the most fun I've ever had, and that is a fitting number 1 match of the year for you.
Yeah, and because of this category, I don't feel like it was been possible for us to have a consensus. The listeners went with Yamato and Mochizuki, followed by...
Oh, real? Oh, that third place.
Oh no, that was their winner. Was
really?
Yamato versus Mochizuki.
Oh my God, I would not have seen that coming. Okay, Andrew, sorry, give me the top 3.
Okay, so number 3 was Shun versus Yamato. Number 2 was D Courage versus Jackie Rita. And number 1 was Mochizuki versus Yamato.
That's so interesting. I'm shocked by that. I thought the tag match would have run away with it, but I like those results.
Yeah, no, it's interesting to see everyone's like what other matches pop up in this category. With this, like further down the card, we got third place vote for Tanaka versus Billy King Kid, Yamato versus Daiki Yanichi, and UT versus Amare, and it's just like and your Shun Skywalker and Naruki Doi at King of Gate. So I like that aspect of this category to see what everyone kind of thinks was the best, just because after you get past like the chalk picks case, that's when you kind of get to see what has impacted people that you maybe not necessarily think of at the time when you put together your list. So I think that I love doing the listeners portion of this thing, and I thought that those were some really interesting and good picks from our listeners that I would make sure to highlight before we got out of here.
And that's the 2025 Ulties.
Yes, that is. In case that's it for us for 2025. So before we get out of here, I wanted to mention that as of the time of recording, you all will probably get this on New Year's Eve. You had one last talk with Tony Khan to close out your calendar year, and I watched it today, and I thought it was, if anything, like one of the more like enthralling conversations that anyone's had with him. And I just wanted to make sure we got mention of that on here. Anything from that interview you want to touch on before we get out?
No, look, Tony could not be more gracious with his time. He could not be a more gracious person. We're not friends. We don't have a personal relationship, but we have a professional relationship that I really enjoy. And I did not expect to talk to him for an hour on camera and almost another hour off camera when we recorded that. But I'm very glad all of that happened. And I appreciate everybody who's watched it so far. As I always say, the wrestling interviews that I do for my job are the single least important thing I do for my job, but they make me look really good when people respond to them in the way that they have. So I greatly appreciate everybody who has watched, everybody who has left a comment, and everybody who supports that project, because that's a pure vanity thing that I'm lucky that I've talked to the right people into letting me do that, and it makes me look good. So I really appreciate it.
For another vanity thing for you in 2026, you got Tony to kind of talk about it on air. Let's just all get this out in the universe here. I know you've talked about it here. Case needs to talk to Pac in 2026. Let's go out on that.
I'm hoping that happens.
Yeah, you're gonna have to like ask him also about like what reggae acts he's into when that happens.
I don't see that happening, but I do hope to talk to Pac in 2026.
And I think that's the note we're going to go out on. Thanks for everyone for joining us in this year. We've had a lot of fun on the show. Thanks for everyone who's also listened to those days over the year, and all the great notes we got from the most recent one. We'll be back with those days as well as Open the Voice Gate in 2026, and we will talk to y'all then. You could find us on social media at Open Voice Case. Open Voice Gate. Case is at _ in your case. I'm at Fujiheya. You could also join the Voices of Wrestling Discord, where there is the Open the Voice Gate channel. That's where we post our show listings. We have a great pinned spreadsheet that Case has put together of all of our evergreen historical content. Dragongate, Michinoku Pro, all of that. I think we're now, if you combine it all, we're getting close to 100 of those things. But that's the Open the Voice Gate channel. And then there's also the Dragongate channel, which during live streams, people are usually talking along with that. Someone posted the Shu Pro from 2004 announcing the firing of Aga Niso today, Case, which have not seen that posting in a long time. So kind of fun thing to see there. But that's the Voices of Wrestling Discord. And I think that's going to do us for 2025. We will see y'all in 2026. Take care, everyone.
Hi, I'm Andrew Rich. And if you're like me, you look at the state of modern wrestling discourse and think, wow, what a cesspool. That's why I'm here to tell you about Music of the Mat Remix. That's right, your favorite wrestling music podcast is back with a new format, where I bring on a guest and we play songs related to wrestling-themed topics. It could be a wrestling reference, a wrestling concept, a wrestling pun, things of that nature. Now you might be saying, Andrew, that is a very, very tenuous connection to pro wrestling on a wrestling podcast network. Is this just an excuse to hang out with your friends and talk about music and ignore the rest of the wrestling landscape? Yes. Yes, it is. So listen to Music of the Mat Remix on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network, available on Apple, Spotify, or your podcast player of choice.
Hi, I'm Case Lowe, co-host of the Open the Voice Gate podcast. The one question I'm constantly asked when it comes to Dragongate is, how do I get into the promotion? Well, stop asking and start listening to the Open the Voice Gate podcast, released every Wednesday on the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. For exclusive news and show reviews, look no further than the leader in Dragongate coverage, Open the Voice Gate.
Did you know Microsoft has officially ended support for Windows 10? Upgrade to Windows 11 with an LG Gram laptop. Voted PC Mag's Reader's Choice Top Laptop Brand for 2025. Thin and ultra lightweight, the LG Gram keeps you productive anywhere. And Windows 11 gives you access to free security updates and ongoing feature upgrades. Visit lgusa.com/iHeart for great seasonal savings on LG Gram laptops with Windows 11. PC Mag Reader's Choice used with permission. All rights reserved.